Welcome to TartleCast with your hosts Alexander McKegg and Jason Rigby, where humanity steps into the future and source data defines the path.
Hey,
Nakamoto! Nakamoto!
Satoshi Nakamoto. What happens when you throw a stone in the water?
Ripple.
It creates a ripple. And that ripple effect is, it can become decentralized. It hits other, it bounces off a wall and then those waves are going over. Everything's interconnected.
Right.
And there's good power. There's resonance in that ripple.
Mm-hmm.
Stored energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great name for a currency. Not a really good name right now when you're getting served by the SEC.
Okay, share more about this.
Yeah,
I want our listeners to know.
This was like recent. This is developing, recently, but the SEC came down on Ripple. The company who actually wrote the code for XRP, which is an altcoin, a digital currency. It's got a market cap of about $23 billion, and they served them up, saying that there's a securities fraud issuance. So actually the issuance of that currency itself, whatever they did, they broke some sort of rule that goes against what the SEC says for, something being considered an asset. Obviously the guys are like, that's flat out not true.
Are they from the United States?
The founders of Ripple. I believe they are.
And they did everything here?
Yeah. And so what we find interesting about this is that when you look at what a blockchain technology is, it's like, who is the SEC suing? Are they suing the globe and all the servers that support the node system that is XRP, Ripple?
Right.
Or are you just targeting these two guys for creating something that has expanded into a $23 billion market cap? When people look at blockchain or Bitcoin, any sort of digital currency, all it is, this is the whole thing. Okay, let's keep this super, super simple. Is like a piece of paper saying, I paid Jason this.
Right.
And then we're gonna encrypt. I'm gonna shift the letters around.
Yes.
And scramble it. And I have the key to unscramble it. That's all it is.
So does the million other servers.
And there's other people that verified that you and I did that. That piece of paper happened.
I mean, not to complicate it, but if you want to sell me another thing, then it goes on that same piece of paper.
It adds it right underneath the piece of paper.
And then it remembers the first one. And
Blockchain?
Then it sends it. It's simple.
Chain. It's a chain of events.
Yes, it's a chain.
And the only thing that the SEC is suing or people coming down on this, like these currencies, is it's encryption technology. Someone just put a dollar value on encryption. That's all it is. We do everything on a ledger all day long. We're always trying to keep tabs on our stuff, right?
Excel, Google Sheets.
All they did is why don't we just create something where the world keeps tabs on the ledger and it's encrypted? It's just a secure piece of paper.
Yes.
Saying this happened here and this happened here.
Yeah, we had an article that we saw on the sslstore.com, and it said this: in the most basic sense, a blockchain is a publicly managed and verified record of transactional data. Period.
That's all it is. If I went into the bank and I said, give me all your transaction records, I'm giving them to the public. That's all it is.
Right.
And how are you going to verify it? Well, we have tons of computers all over the globe that support this system. The bank I'm going to take all the weight off your shoulders, Mr. Bank. I'm going to pass it off to all the people across the globe. And the bank's going to wonder, well, why would anyone want to support that? Well, for supporting it, I get compensated. Every time I do computational work to prove a block, I get paid. The computer gets paid for doing it. So now it fixes that incentive approach. So what it is this management of this piece of paper across the globe is supported by people trying to make a couple of shekels from just saying that, yes, this is encrypted. Yes, this transaction did happen between Alex and Jason. That's all blockchain is. And so what I find funny about the SEC is that you are coming and targeting, two individuals who created a currency, but they don't own the currency. The currency is supported by people all over the globe. What are you going to do? Sue the globe?
Yeah, you can't. And
You're going to shut the internet off?
and that's why they're mistaken, because the privacy part of it, or the secure aspect of it, is that it's a consensus.
It is a consensus.
And it has to have a consensus. That's the problem. That's why you can't, it's very tough to break into blockchain.
And it's like, how do you say that one person specifically owns it when it's a decentralized asset?
Yes. Yeah.
All of these computers that support that ledger own a piece of it.
Yes.
The interesting thing about this currency that the old guard cannot wrap their head around, it's not owned by one person.
Right.
I don't have a stack of gold buried in my yard.
Yes.
Everybody says that I own just this intangible thing.
Yeah, and when you look at an actual chain and you put a link and you put a link and you put a link, and that link stays permanent and you never can remove that link.
No.
That's the part that scares everybody, because that you can't remove. So if you put a link and it's verified, then that link is forever.
It's right
and
there.
when you want to do something else, you just add another link to it.
That's correct. But it's the whole point of these currencies was to continue democratizing finance.
Yes.
And when the SEC comes in and tries to sue somebody, it's like, you fundamentally do not understand what this thing is. It's a currency owned by people, not by banks.
And it's verified. And that's the part. It's like, because I remember, what do they have when you walk in the door of a bank and they have these old plaques, and then your money's safe?
Yeah, it's FDIC insured up to
Yes.
$250,000.
Yes.
Sir, I have $500,000 in the bank. Well, it's a loss.
Yes.
Oh, good. Thanks.
That happened in the 1930s.
Yeah.
People don't realize that the banks were shut down and people were trying to get their money out of the banks.
They were running on banks.
Yes.
And the banks don't have enough cash because we set up this stupid fractional reserve system. So the bank only has to have like 10% of the actual stuff on hand, as opposed to, the actual asset base that's there.
Yeah. And I kind of want to get into, for the rest of our time, if you don't mind, Alex, there's 3 things on blockchain that he says there's 3 pillars. And we've talked about them, but I kind of want to go over each one. Number 1 is the decentralization.
Yeah. So the first part about the blockchain is that it's supported by computers all over the globe.
Right.
So that means it's not just one central federal bank that is saying, this is the value, we're the ones that are keeping it safe, we're the only person responsible for it.
We own the Excel file.
Yeah,
and we can go in, and we have certified people that can go in and make changes to the ledger.
And we can print as much money as we want.
Yes.
No, that's not what's going to happen. It's decentralized, so that the ownership and responsibility is passed off to everybody that supports that system, that sees value in it.
And then number 2, blockchain pillar number 2, this is important, is transparency.
Yeah, transparency. The blockchain is public.
Right.
You can go back and look at the entire record of transactions. It's not a black box thing where, some banks are like, well, what happened here? Who's transited this? What foreign offshore account, BBVI, like what's going on here? No, it's all completely public for everybody to review. Yeah.
And I like this. It says, and this is bitcoin.org. It says, since users usually have to reveal their identity in order to receive services or goods, Bitcoin addresses cannot remain fully anonymous. As the blockchain is permanent, it's important to note that something not traceable currently may become trivial to trace in the future. For these reasons, Bitcoin addresses should only be used once, and users must be very careful not to disclose their addresses.
Yeah, because if you have your OG address,
right,
it's like saying you don't want to tell people where you live.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
It's the same freaking concept. Yeah, and what's the third pillar?
Number 3 is immutability.
Yeah, it doesn't change.
Right.
After it's been processed and verified across the network, the node network, that's it.
No alterations, cannot be changed, and cannot be tampered with.
You don't go back to it, nothing. And that's what holds the integrity of that system. Like that piece of paper, you can't cut it, you can't fold it, you can't use a different type of ink. That is what it is.
Right. You can't cook the books.
No, you cannot cook the blockchain books.
And how long have we been cooking books?
We've been cooking books for a long time. Not us, but I'm just saying, as an example, people have been cooking books for a while.
There's a big street in New York called...
It's called Wall Street. No one's
to have these 3 immutable pillars put to Wall Street? Could you imagine? They're like, we want transparency. We want immutability.
This is why they
want
bashed
decentralization.
This is why they bashed it at first. Warren Buffett's like, there's no value in this. And all the hedge fund managers, there's no value. It's junk. And then they're like, we got to buy as much as possible.
Yes.
And then they're like, to
it's
the moon.
22,000.
Hodl, right? Hodl, to the moon.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, wow, it's at 20 grand now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think it's at 22 something.
Well, joke's on you guys.
Yes.
Thanks, blockchain.
Thank you for listening to TotalCast with your hosts Alexander McKegg and Jason Rigby, where humanity steps into the future and source data defines the path. What's your data worth?